Yeah. Thank you so much, first of all, Elena, for having me today. I am super excited to be among such great peers and in front of you. Everyone today, fingers crossed, technology is going to be on my side. Yeah. So I will start by trying to properly share my screen.
Yeah, no problem. Um,
Okay.
okay, I can see a very some very interesting questions already here. So just remember, guys, that after presentation, Kazima will be taking questions, and then at 2:45 Eastern as well, she'll be taking questions. Okay, yeah, Kazima, we can see your presentation, so everything's good.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. We're moving from Quebec to the beautiful blue water city of Sarnia, Ontario. My name is Cosima McDonald. I'm a regulated Canadian immigration consultant, and I specialize, among others, in spousal and partner sponsorship, specifically the complicated ones, the ones that other people typically, hand back and say, just good luck with that. Now, today we're going to be talking about why good relationships run into trouble. And I promise you, by the end of this, you'll never look at a spousal file the same way again. So grab your coffee, and this is going to be fun. Typically, a spousal sponsorship file, it is so different from everything else. It is a more delicate approach, is not very straightforward. The eligibility is pretty clear in terms of who can sponsor, who can be sponsored. But when we get into the realm of the actual relationship and the proof of being genuine, that's where all the tricky parts start happening because, right, how do you actually translate a feeling into something that advocates for you? And this is the biggest challenge. Now, let me start with something I hear constantly. A client comes to me sometimes after a refusal, sometimes before, and they say some version of, but we're genuinely in love. There's nothing to worry about it, right? And every single time I have to deliver the same uncomfortable truth. Nobody's questioning your love. IRCC isn't sitting there saying, these two don't have feelings for each other. What they're asking is, does the file prove it? A weak file doesn't mean a weak relationship. Please remember that. It means the story didn't come through clearly enough on paper. And here's the good news, this is totally fixable. A bad feeling isn't fixable. A file with gaps, that's exactly what I do. Now, so here's how I want you to think about everything we're covering today. Every document you submit, every photograph, every letter from your mother in law who misspelled your name, but well, clearly she loves you, it all passes through one lens, one question, and one filter. That's it, just one. And then when you really understand what that question is not what people assume it is, for sure, it completely changes how you build a file. So let me show you how. Here's the question. Is this a genuine relationship or is it primarily entered into for immigration purposes? So, see, right away, we have two layers of this. The genuineness. Do you guys really get along and love each other and want to be together? Also, are you primarily into this for immigration? Right? So, that's the question behind every spousal sponsorship file. Full stop. Not are they happy? Not do they love each other? The question is genuine or transactional. Now, here's what makes this tricky. A file can raise that question and create real scrutiny, even when the answer is obviously yes, this is a genuine relationship. Things such a fast timeline, a thin chat history, no third party witness. Those things look suspicious on paper, even when the couple is completely real. The flag doesn't mean the answer is wrong. It means the file isn't telling the story loudly enough. So that's the gap I really live and work in. To understand where these files get into trouble, I use a framework I developed that is called Trace. I tried for a long time to translate something vague into something concrete, into a system, into a guide that will prevent me as an immigration advocate for you to miss any gaps, any squeaky parts in a file. So I use a framework I developed that I call it Trace. There are 5 pillars. Each one maps a dimension of relationship evidence that IRCC actually evaluates. T is for togetherness. Did you actually share a life, or did you just, share an address on paper? Because officers, believe it or not, know the difference. R is for relationship history. Did this relationship grow in a way real relationships grow, messy, gradual, just human, or does the timeline look more like it was engineered a lot around a deadline? Um, the middle component is A for affirmation. Does your anyone on earth really know you're together? Does your relationship have witnesses? Does your family, your friends, anyone around you, right? When you're in love, genuinely, you want to scream it to the world. So affirmation is a very, very important aspect. C is for communication. Can you show you talked consistently over time? Or do you have, 14 curated screenshots and a prayer? Communication, very important. The last component is evolution. Are you building a real shared life together? Does it look like you're just building the file, right? You need to show you see your relationship beyond the PR approval. And here's what matters about Trace. A file doesn't need to be weak across all 5 to draw serious scrutiny. One thin pillar here is enough to invite questions about the rest. It's like a chain, and officers are very good at finding that weak link. So here are again the 5 red flags. One pillar per one red flag per each pillar and what they signal to an officer reviewing your file. Togetherness, the red flag, you don't actually know each other. Red flag 2, your relationship history. The timeline looks kind of rushed. Third one, you're the only 2 people who know that you're married or together. The fourth one, communication. The chat history is very thin. And the last, about evolution, the engagement happened, let's say, the week of the principal applicant status in Canada. These are expired. So now let's go through each one of them. Now, before we get into the red flag 1, I want us to have, first of all, a little fun, and I want you to think a little bit. Now, IRCC, let's say, interviews you and your spouse. Obviously, they do it separately. This is standard practice. The officers ask each of you, what side of the bed does your partner sleep on? One of you says left, the other one says right. What happens next? And I want you, if possible, just for you to type your answers in the chat. And I will try to figure out how I can actually see this properly. Okay. Yep. You are correct, Zubair. The answer is B. Obviously, one mismatch doesn't tank the file on its own. But here again, what this can do, it tells the officer to keep looking. And once an officer is actively looking for inconsistencies, trust me, they will find them. That's the job. Small things become patterns, patterns become questions, and questions become delays, or worse, a file that needs to be rebuilt from scratch. Now, red flag one, clearly you don't really know each other. It is about togetherness. So on the left side here, there are several examples or instances on what a risky file looks like. So, for example, both partners, when are interviewed separately, they contradict each other on things they absolutely should know. And I'm not talking about obscure trivia here. The basics, daily routines, each other's family members, what they actually do when they come home. The file, for example, if the couple has no lease in both his names and they're both living in Canada, no shared utility bills, no mail going to both of them, just two people saying we live together with absolutely nothing to back it up. Files like that draw scrutiny. Sometimes they still get approved, but they make the officer work for it, and that's never where you want to be. The strong version, on the other side, both partners independently describe each other's lives with almost identical and specific details, which is normal. You know, real documentation of cohabitation, like a lease, utilities, mail, knowledge of each other's families, habits, quirks, pet peeves about each other, right? Like you twist your hair in a way I don't like it, or my partner sucks his teeth or her teeth. Very, very basic, mundane things, the boring stuff. And the boring stuff is the best proof. So, as a fix, talk to each other about the boring things. Sit down together, not to rehearse, but because you're genuinely sharing a life, you should be able to describe this, to describe everything the same way without even trying. Now, if you sit down and you realize you cannot really do that, that's a gap worth closing before an officer finds it first. You found it, which is the greatest thing you can do. Love is not the file. Proof of love is the file. That's the whole game. Now, are you ready for another quick quiz? We have this scenario. Couple meets online in January, engaged in March, sponsorship filed in June, completely genuine relationship for real. What do you think would be the officer's first instinct? Anybody? You can type in the chat A, B, or C. Great answers. It is B. Clearly, every time. Now, remember, IRCC is not The Bachelor. A fast courtship on paper raises questions, even when the relationship is completely real. The solution isn't to apologize for the timeline, but instead is to build around a file so through it, it answers the scrutiny before the officer even finishes forming the question. Anticipate what they will ask. So this would be the red flag. Two, the relationship history part of the trace system, where the timeline just looks looks rushed, right? In the risky version here, we have examples like met and married within a couple of months. Nothing is documented in between. The narrative is basically just a list of dates, not more so of a story. So, no explanation for why things moved fast, a significant age gap with no evidence of literally genuine shared connection. If there are previous other short marriages or previous sponsorships in their history, there are unaddressed or absent. Now, that file is going to get a long, hard look. On the other side, the strong version is an actual story, messages and photos that show the connection built in real time, not just assembled after the fact for this specific application. Honest context that explains that fast pace. Because sometimes there are genuinely good reasons for a very fast courtship, like cultural norms, circumstances, long distance logistics, and an officer who understands why reads that file completely different. Both partners independently tell the exact same story every time. So what is the fix actually? You can't rewind a calendar, but you can make a fast timeline make complete and obvious sense. A rich narrative plus a dense, genuine message history equals basically an officer who stops squinting at your dates and starts believing your story. And this is the ultimate goal. Another quiz here to make sure that you guys have some input. So, spousal sponsorship file, legally married for 3 years, zero third party support letters, not even one. What does the officer think in this case? If you can put your answers in the chat, that would be great. Option A, their loved ones are probably just very private people. B, they're probably just forgot to put letters in. Or C, does anyone, literally anyone, know this marriage exists? Awesome. Indeed, the answer is C. Every time. Genuine relationships make noise. People know. They're witnesses. Again, you're in love. You want to scream it to the world from the top of your lungs. You tell your best friends, you tell your parents, you tell your siblings, you tell strangers, right? A marriage or a relationship that exists in complete isolation, no letters, no community, no evidence of a social life together, raises a very specific question. And you don't want that question in that officer's head while they're reading the rest of your file. Now, this is the third red flag, the affirmation. And again, how does a weak file look like? With no support letters or letters they say, oh, they seem happy and nothing beyond that. I'm sorry, but they seem happy. It's not a support letter. That's something you'd say about a houseplant. No photos at any family events, no sign that either family even knows the relationship exists, or letter writers who just couldn't name a single specific memory if asked. On Now, this kind of file has a visibility problem. It's not evidence of fraud, but it's a gap that invites a question. On the other hand, a strong file in the affirmation section has letters with actual memories, not speeches, but stories. I remember when they first told us, for example, is worth more than 10 letters that say, oh, what a lovely couple. Photos at real events, right? Birthdays, family dinners, weddings, um, wedding after party. Late at night when you're just with a couple of friends and everybody took their makeup off and their high heel shoes and you just all huddle around the fire. That is more personal than the main wedding shot where everybody sits pretty for a portrait, right? Everything like this, captioned, dated, identifiable, letters from people across different areas of both of your lives. And when possible, letters from people with standing in their community. For example, spiritual guide, or your employer, various areas of your life, not just friends and family. So the fix, if you do notice this gap in your file, and almost nobody does this right without being told, brief your letter writers. Do not give templates. Don't get me wrong. Do not give templates, but sit down with them and tell them what's actually useful. One specific story filled letter from someone who genuinely knows you as a couple is worth more than a stack of generic ones. So this is one of those things that sounds simple, but consistency trips up files that are otherwise pretty solid. It's time for a little quiz again. Now, this is the scenario. 3-year relationship, great narrative, beautiful photos, communication evidence. We have this. We have 14 handpicked WhatsApp screenshots from the past 60 days. That's it. So, what would be your verdict? A, clean pass, B, refusal risk, or C, officers loved a curated highlight reel. So, if you can put your in your chat, Zubar says B. Okay, sorry, Zubair, I keep misspelling your name. B. It is a hard B. Now, when a multi-year relationship shows 2 months only of messages, the question isn't, again, are they in love? The question is, when did they start this application? When did their relationship started? The curated highlight reel signals exactly what it sounds like. Real relationships are consistent. They're ongoing and honestly kind of boring in the exactly right ways. So for the fourth red flag, the trace framework, the communication. A risky file would look like this. A handful of beautiful, carefully chosen screenshots with no frequency, no rhythm, and no patterns. No call logs, no video history, no emails for long distance couples, no phone records, months-long gaps with nothing to explain them. One app, one short window, supposed to what represent years that you've been together. I once reviewed a file for a 3-year relationship with 18 WhatsApp messages in the entire package. 18. I genuinely thought pages were missing. So strong communication shows logs with frequency and a rhythm. And I mean the ordinary stuff, not the highlights. Video call logs with dates and durations, phone bills, where this is relevant. For couples navigating the language gap, translated logs with context. Evidence across multiple platforms, a record spanning at least 12 months of real consistent contact. So the fix, I normally suggest this to my clients: export 90 days across every platform, but not the same 90 days. Don't curate. Obviously, be respectful and just sift through it. And very, very intimate messages or pictures, set them aside. We don't want to send that to IRCC. Submit the boring stuff. The did you eat, for example, or I'm running late texts, or even a little bickering, you didn't get the right type of toilet paper. Officers are looking for a real rhythm, not a greatest hits compilation. Now, we are at evolution, the last quiz. This is the scenario. Work permit expires March 15. Engagement announced March 22nd. Sponsorship filed April 30th. What does the officer look at first? A, B, or C? If you can put it in the chat, that would be great. I promise you, it's the last quiz. Okay, Marco Polo says B, B. Thank you so much, Zubair. You're always, always present here. Yes, you are correct. It is B, the timing. And here's what people consistently underestimate. IRCC has your entire immigration history. Every visa, every entry, every exit, every previous application, even if you flagpoled, it's right there. A relationship that formalizes the weak status is lost as a parent. Officers have seen enough times that I'm willing to bet has its own section in their training. Being genuine doesn't exempt you from explaining the timing. It just means you have a real story to tell. So just tell it. The last of the red flag now, here, the evolution. This one trips up genuinely real couples all the time because timing isn't a matter of fraud, but unexplained timing looks like it might be. And that's enough to make a file significantly harder to get across the line. Now, on the risky version here, We have a relationship formalized right when the status changed with nothing, no context around it, no evidence of a shared future being built before the deadline hit, and immigration history that's vague or conveniently incomplete. Now, prior applications or previous sponsorship history that is just doesn't appear there. No shared financial footprint, no joint expenses, no transfers, nothing that shows two people actually are building a future and a life together. Now, that file has exposure. It can still be approved, but it's going to work a lot. You're going to have to work a lot harder to get there. Now, strong evolution, on the other hand, owns the timeline completely. A full, honest immigration history, explained and not hidden. A proof of a real shared life already in motion. An address together, if you both live in Canada, employment, financial integration, messages where you actually discuss your future, housing, family. Are you getting a dog? Are we getting a cat? What comes next? What is the next step after, let's say, your spouse becomes PR? The conversations that prove this is a life plan and not a contingency plan. Um, and this is my most important piece of advice for this particular portion. Don't try to hide an uncomfortable timeline. Officers have seen this pattern hundreds of times. They know what a hidden timeline looks like, and hiding it raises more questions than the timeline itself ever would. Just own it, explain it, surround it with everything that proves this is real. A well told, complex story is not a liability. In the right hands, it's actually an asset. So think about it like that. Now, here's everything at once: the trace diagnosis map. Togetherness with the first red flag, where you can't describe each other's lives. Cohabitation falls apart under questioning. The relationship history, where the timeline looks engineered and not organic. The affirmation, next session, where you don't have any witnesses or not very strong and looks like a private arrangement more. The communication, red flag 4, where let's say you have 60 days of texts for a 3-year relationship. And the last one, evolution, where you're engaged, let's say the week the visa ran out, or there's no actual plan of how you're going to move forward with your life, what the progression of your life would be once the principal applicant becomes a permanent resident. So when you look at the file through all these 5 pillars at once, the exposure becomes quite obvious, right? The question is whether you find it first or an officer does. And I'll let you figure out which scenario is basically most expensive. Here is what I want you to actually do with this. Before any of you submit any file that goes anywhere, yours, your clients, your friends, whoever, run a trace self audit and be honest. Rate the evidence, not the feelings, not how in love you are or they are. That's, actually document. 1 to 5, each pillar, write it down, think of it, and think in terms of what documents you have, what documents you can produce to cover everything in here. Now, typically, one category of 3 or below, that signals a gap. I typically advise to have somebody review application package, immigration professional or not. You can have, a friend, your grandma, a parent, someone that is not directly involved in this application and can see it with fresh eyes and being objective. If you have 2 or more at 3 or below, don't submit that file without professional eyes on it first. Truthfully, the exposure is real there, but it's fixable. Only if you catch it before it's sitting in an officer queue. This is exactly the audit I run with every client before we start building a single document, because I'd far rather spend an hour finding the gaps than spend, 3 months trying to fix the outcome after the fact. That's the difference between, doing this well and doing this hopefully. Now, if you want to, you can put in the chat um, if you had the chance to rate your own file already, and put in the chat if you feel like you have a weakness in any of these categories. And then during the Q&A, maybe we can address it. It's up to you. I understand this is a very like private matter, so this would be fine. Now, I want to leave you with something I generally believe in. A difficult file doesn't mean a doomed file. It means the story needs to be told better, more completely, more clearly, with the right evidence in the right places. Everything is fixable, almost always. I personally specialize in the files that look complicated on the surface, with fast timelines, with prior applications, previous gaps in status, cases where someone looked at the situation and said, there's going to be a problem. Those are exactly the files I love working with, because a complex file built correctly is not a liability. It's just a story that needs, a skilled narrator. So if anything we covered today applies to your file, um, please, that's what, consultations are for, working through your specific situations, not just a general picture. For everyone that joined me today, I have a 20% promo code for consultation. It's called Summit. You can scan the QR code right here. I would actually love to hear from you. So yeah, if we can go and see what questions do you guys actually have. Hello. Okay. Thank you, Olena.
Okay, thank you, Cosima. I have my video glitching. Oh, here we go.
Oh, you're here.
Okay, thank you so much. I put the links in the chat just so they're clickable, so you can find the links there. And yeah, we have some questions. So question in the chat number one is let me just, I think it was one up there from Rami. When you believe an officer made a mistake and you can prove it, do you prefer an appeal process or resubmission or reconsideration?
That's such a multi-layered question. So first of all, it depends. It depends what stage are you in, right? From your question, I assume your application was refused already. That's how you found out an officer made a mistake. Um, Now, the appeal option is not available for every type of application. Even for spousal sponsorship, right? It depends whether you filed inland or outland. We're going to have during today a deeper conversation about that later. My colleague Arshin is going to discuss the inland and outland. A reconsideration, sure, I will I always encourage a reconsideration. However, keep in mind one thing, no matter the type of application, the officers and IRCC, they're not obligated to respond. They might respond, they might not. So if you don't hear back, there's actually nothing you can do about it, right? It's a shot in the dark. Now, if they do respond, they might actually have a program manager do the review of your file. They might not, they might deny it. One thing I want you to keep in mind when you do a reconsideration, you cannot introduce new evidence. You have to make your argument based on what was initially submitted in the file. So when you say they made a mistake and you can prove it, if you can prove it with documents that were initially submitted with the file, then absolutely. If you want to introduce something new, then resubmission would be the best route to go about it.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Let's see other questions. What about if the couple don't chat often but do more of video calls and you have kids together who are Canadian citizens?
Okay, that's actually a great scenario. You have a lot to work with there. There's logs of video calls, right? Even more than that, I typically tell my clients to start recording their sessions, run it through a transcript program, then you actually see it on paper. It's like, and not only audio, curate it, right? Make sure, they're not very, very personal or indecent things in there, and use that. The fact that you guys have kids helps a lot. It's strong. It shows a way, way stronger type of relationship. There's actually a question in the document checklist for spousal sponsorship if you do have kids together. That question is there for a reason.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, one question also from Ivana. Married for 16 years to Canadian husband with 3 children, all Canadian citizens. Now, what proof of relationship do I need aside the requirement proof, aside the like regular requirements, to convince an officer in my application for PR from Ghana?
16 years is a long time there.
That's the first thing that I was thinking about as well. Yeah.
Also kids, right? So again, there's another question on the document checklist. Have you and a spouse been married for longer than 2 years? Again, that question is there for a reason. It shows a stronger relationship, clearly, than difficult, just a general one. um Aside from general evidence that every spousal sponsorship should include, I would advise you addressing why for 16 years you weren't interested in becoming Canadian PR. Is it because you and your husband and your kids lived in Ghana? Is it because I don't know, maybe you worked for a Canadian company and you had back-to-back work permits and everything was going great, and with 3 kids you barely have time to breathe, not to mention file an application. But provide well, but provide a reason, because I am personally wondering, why did you guys for 16 years didn't file for a sponsorship? And my rationale is this: if I'm wondering about something, an officer will for sure too. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I actually think that your case is more straightforward than others.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, now fun question. How can couples effectively prove a genuine relationship for spousal sponsorship when there is a 30-year age difference?
Uh, there are ways. Age is just one factor. Um, you can basically build on the other pillars around the trace system, right? Um, how the younger partner, is the kind of personality that seeks maybe someone more of a protector, someone more of a mature mindset, right? It can be a cultural thing. I don't know the specific of the situation, but I can tell you this. If you guys are in a relationship and you genuinely love each other and are in this for quite some time, clearly 30 years age gap is not a problem for you, right? It's not. So Sit down together and think about those elements. Why are we together? Why do we love each other? I don't like couples don't really ask themselves that. You know, why what do I love about you, my partner, right? The way you treat me, the way you take care of me, the way that is your proof in your relationship.
Yeah. Sounds good. Okay. Question from Lisa. How many photos, captioned and dated, would you recommend as part of the spousal sponsorship file? Because there is a file size limit.
There is a file size limit. That's true. And the way I work around it, I literally copy paste the photos in a Word document. That's where I normally edit the dates, place, location, and then you just basically save it as a PDF that will heavily reduce the size. Another thing that I want to point out, there are several categories in the checklist where you can upload or use photos. Specifically, the photo category tells you no more than 20 pictures. However, doesn't mean that you cannot insert pictures in other places as proof of your relationship. So if you have a very, very long relationship, I find that 20 pictures are not enough because I typically look for like one or two from each year or each. Uh, so just see what fits better for you. But keep this in mind, you don't necessarily have to limit yourself to 20 pictures. There are creative ways around it.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, now a bit more complicated question. What can be done if principal applicant has non-accompanying dependent child not in their custody, and the child doesn't want to get the medical done?
That is that is such a funny question because I'm actually working on a sponsorship right now that previously had this issue. It was even more complicated than that. So the child was initially accompanying, then the other biological parent basically didn't want to take them for the medical, so they couldn't do the medicals, being a minor, right? Um, and yes, we all know even the child or the accompanying child is not dependent child is not accompanying. All family members have to do medicals. In this situation, I would just document um, the ways you have tried to get that accomplished. For example, communication with who has custody of the child, whether it's the other biological parent or who can actually bring the child for a medical evaluation. Document that, affidavits, written affidavits, notarized, like not just a letter in a Word document, notarized from people in the family that know about this situation. I'm sure, if you do all of these right, everything will work out. You can't really get refused because another person um is just doesn't can take your child to a medical examination. And something here that maybe you want to keep in mind for the future, um the age limit for an accompanying child, it is 22 years old. So you actually have 4 years from the time that child turns 18 until the time that child turns 22, where they're legally an adult. They can take themselves to a medical. So at that point, you can apply, if you want to, for a child dependent child sponsorship, a standalone sponsorship, if you at that point want to bring your child to Canada. So yeah, that was a little more complicated.
Yes, that's definitely more complicated. Okay, let's do. I think we have about 4 minutes here. So,
One more.
yes.
Amazing.
Let me see.
while you look for one, I'm going to respond
Mhm.
to, I think Liza, because it's a very quick one. Would you recommend statements from the couple and friends relative to be notarized? I normally don't ask my clients to
Yeah.
notarize them. However, every person that writes a letter, full contact information and copy of their ID right there within the letter. And that's it. Don't
Yeah.
spend your money on notaries.
Yeah, for sure. And another quick one, did the child 10 years and below do medical?
I don't know on top of my head.
Yeah, they do everybody does medical, for sure.
Even
Yeah.
babies, right? Biometrics have, I think, 12 or 14.
14, I
Um,
think biometrics
yeah,
or
yeah,
yeah, something like
yeah,
that.
that's correct. That's correct.
Yeah.
One
Yeah.
more thing I want to say quickly about medicals. Um, for the principal applicant, be careful if you're pregnant during the spousal sponsorship because part of
Yeah.
medicals, you have to do x-rays. So that's why, again, there's a question there in the document checklist. If you're pregnant, you won't be able to do the medicals, right? So keep that in mind when you do your timing.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's take this last one. So I'm on a study permit and my boyfriend is Canadian. We are getting ready to apply for spousal sponsorship before I graduate. And we have been a common law for just over a year. We live together, but not leasing, as he owns the place. And I don't pay the house bill, but we are on the same insurance. Could me not paying the bills at this place become an issue? Is there anything else we should watch out for? And if it helps, we've been in a relationship for over 5 years, and our parents and friends know about our relationship.
That's great. First thing I want to address in this situation, he's not your boyfriend, he's your common law. Okay. So, um, you have to get into that mindset, especially when you're like starting to prepare for a spousal sponsorship.
Hmm.
Secondly, to me, it makes sense that you're maybe not contributing the same way he does, right? To all financially. First of all, he owns the house, right? Well, I don't know if there's a mortgage there happening or parents are paying it, but clearly, you're not contributing to that, which is fine. You were a student, so you're not working, you're not making money, right? Again, it makes sense. Well, how from thin air, what are you supposed to pay it with, right? Make sure you explain this clearly. That's why this happened. We don't have financials. However, um proof of relationship, proof of shared address, your phone bill, right? Does your personal cell phone bill, do you have the same address as he does? Your tax, your T4s and notice of assessment. You have to file those, right? You're a student, there's probably tuition happening there. You have to file your taxes. That is a government document that shows both of you have the same address. It doesn't necessarily have to be a lease. It doesn't necessarily have to, you don't necessarily have to show you're sending him money and he's sending you money. If you have financial transactions from him to you, that is great. Also, parents know about this. How do parents support your relationship? Right? You're young, still a student, right? Do they support you financially? Are they willing to support you in the future financially? Do you guys live in the house that they own, right? Like there's so many things here that you can work with. Don't I don't want you to get scared about this like trace system. I want you to to see where an officer may have questions, and it's great. That's exactly what you're doing, and answer it before your file gets on their desk. So you actually have a lot to work with there.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Cosima. I really appreciate it. I'm just gonna put one last time links to contact Cosima if you ever want to. You can also find her on TikTok. You can just type name Cosima RCIC and she will just pop up at you. And I'll send the link in the chat in a bit as well. And
Thank,
yeah, thank you so much.
thank you so much for having me.